I've had my bags really gone through, and they've really talked to me about who packed the bags, and did you leave these bags alone for any period of time? Those questions were never asked last year or the year before. This year, they seem to be really taking special care at the airports, but obviously not special enough that we had 3 planes hijacked today.
No, and the other point is I've said, and others who you talked to this morning say, if a person is bent on willing to give her life or his life to accomplish a task, it's very difficult to stop that. And what you have to do is make the impediment sufficient so at least they won't be successful and not aid them. And we haven't really done that. We haven't made ourselves security conscious. We take too much for granted and we think nobody will ever do us.
The land of the free.
And regrettably, the disaster today, the tragedy today shows that our awareness and what we took for granted, we can't take for granted again. We're going to really have to be much more mindful of how we're going to survive.
And we just have a little more information for the viewers. The plane that crashed in western Pennsylvania, we are now told, was United Flight 93 out of Newark, and it was headed for San Francisco. Now, was that one of the hijacked planes? Did some heroic pilot perhaps save an awful lot of lives in Washington? We don't know at this point, but we do know that it was United Flight 93 out of Newark, heading west, and could have been diverted.
Don't we know, and what else could very well be coming?
As a security expert, there are other suspected terrorists in this country, in this city. What do you do now?
I would assume that the agencies dealing with that, the terrorism task force, are doing the things that ought to be done to start to tighten up on those groups that they know. But these are cells in many instances, and you don't have the ability to have an organization can infiltrate one group and therefore know who everybody is. So you're going to have to be very careful and very mindful and start to look intensely and devote a lot of manpower to that.
Explain the way cells work, if you would, Joe.
What often happens, depending on the organization, is that different groups have different people involved. One cell, if you would, does not know who the other cells are. That way, if one group goes down, if certain people are captured, if certain people are taken into custody, they can't give up somebody else. Each works on its own and there's a coordination. That type of structure has been growing, and worldwide that's been recognized. And if you look at the Mideast and you look at what's going on there, and not only in the Mideast, but in the former Soviet republics, and as the conflict heightens.
Excuse me, just I have to interrupt.
That American Airlines has confirmed that it has had 2 of its planes crash, and that United
reminded there are forces at work in our world that would destroy us all if they could.
And breathing out of doors. As the wind blows, as emergency vehicles go by, the wind blows this soot, this ash, this white stuff, which makes it extremely hard to breathe. We see every now and then an emergency personnel person with oxygen mask on, firefighters with oxygen masks on, people with surgical masks on, trying to either get to the area or come out of the area. In general, though, the general public has been removed from downtown New York, south of the Brooklyn Bridge or Chambers Street, south of Chambers Street, and people continue to stream over the Brooklyn Bridge towards Brooklyn and also uptown, as your earlier reports had, to get away from the whole of downtown Manhattan.
Ollie, earlier on you used a very telling image about a snowstorm. Mm-hmm. Describe that for us again.
Sure. You look out the window here at downtown. I'm looking at the parking of the plaza that took the brunt of the falling debris. I have no reports of any other buildings in jeopardy. Right across the street, there's a huge, big black hotel. I can't remember the name.
Is that the Marriott?
No. There's another one on the east side of the World Trade Center, a big, tall, black building. It is a hotel. That is, I can see it now, it's still standing, of course. But as far as the damage to other buildings, I'm not aware of, well, there must be damage, but I'm not aware of any other buildings that are in trouble.
You know, reporters are people too, Ali. How have you fared as far as your breathing is concerned?
No, I was wearing, before I got on the phone here, wearing a surgical mask, as is everyone here. We're fortunate to be in a hospital which has these kinds of things. Other people are taking out their handkerchiefs, and one guy had his hat and over his face, and just trying to make it indoors. Once again, it is a ghost town here.
All right, Ollie, thank you very much again. Ollie, reporting from NYU Downtown Hospital, just a few blocks from the World Trade Center over there on the west side of Manhattan.
All right, Jim, I do think we have someone else on the phone that we all probably want to talk to. Joe Coffey, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Joe Coffey is a retired policeman with the NYPD. He is a terrorism expert. We thank you very much for joining us this morning. This, of course, devastating. Have you ever seen the likes of anything like this? And how did it happen?
The only thing that came close to this was the LaGuardia bombing, which I investigated back in 1976. But it was nowhere near this in volume, of course. And the human devastation there at LaGuardia Airport was incredible. And this reminds me of Pearl Harbor and the comments of the Japanese admiral. We have awoken the sleeping tiger.
What do we do? How can we address this? How could something like this happen?
Well, years ago, when they tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan and subsequently the Pope, I made a comment back then that when you're dealing with people who are religious zealots like we have here, who are willing to give their lives up for the sake of the cause, so to speak, very difficult to stop, very difficult to police, and also very difficult to solve.
Joe, you're involved with a lot of terrorism intelligence. How did something like this slip by? Have you ever heard about this organization?
Well, there's so many organizations that take credit for these things after they happen. It's hard to filter through. But the FBI and the NYPD have a terrorist task force, which probably has the best database in the world regarding these type of people. This will be resolved by the FBI and the New York City Police Department.
Joe, have you ever heard of the Democratic Front for Liberation of Palestine, and are they related at all to Osama bin Laden?
I haven't heard of them, but you got to remember something. I'm out of the business for a couple of years now, so I'm not privy to intelligence information. But as I said, I believe the FBI and the terrorist task force will, if they don't already know, find out the business.
Joe, you know the FBI is always putting these people who are suspected terrorists under surveillance. Now, you're talking about 3 possible synchronized attacks on major landmarks in this country. How did that slip by?
Well, it's not very easy to explain, but as I said, when you're dealing with people who operate out of cells, they're very difficult to infiltrate.